Pete shrugged. It's okay, but I get to feed him. Okay, I'm gonna put the milk back in the fridge. Maybe he'll drink it tomorrow. What about Chester? Toby said, dropping the frantic cat to the floor. Maybe he'd like it. Chester made a beeline for Mrs. Monroe and looked up at her plaintively. Oh, Chester doesn't want any more milk. Do you, Chester? You've already had your milk today. She reached down and patted Chester on his head and walked into the kitchen. Chester didn't move. Okay, bedtime, said Mr. Monroe. Good night, Bonicula, Toby said. Good night, Count Bonicula, Pete said sarcastically in what I took to be his attempt at a Transylvanian accent. I may be wrong, but I thought I saw a flicker of movement from the cage. Good night, Harold. Good night, Chester. I licked Toby good night. Good night, Smelly Harold. Good night, Dumb Chester. I drooled on Pete's foot. Mom, Harold drooled on my foot. Good night, Pete, Mrs. Monroe said with great finality as she came back into the living room, and then more calmly. Wait a minute. Good night, Pete, Mrs. Monroe said with great finality as she came back into the living room, and then more calmly. Good night, Harold. Good night, Chester. Mr. and Mrs. Monroe went up the stairs together. You know, dear, Mr. Monroe said, that was very clever, Bunicula. I could never have thought of a name like that. Oh, I don't know, Robert, she smiled as she put her arm through his. I think Prince is a lovely name, too. The room was quiet. Chester was still sitting by the closed kitchen door in a state of shock. Slowly he turned to me. I wish they had named him Fluffy. Was all that? He said. All right, guys, so now we're on now we're on chapter 2, Music in the Night.